Well, hello, and welcome to another edition of Wisdom Wednesday. It is the 1st of February, and today we're in Proverbs 1. We're going to extract some information from it and hopefully begin to continue to apply the wisdom that's found in the book of Proverbs to our own individual lives, and by extension of our lives, the lives of those around us. We're going to be reading a few sections here of Proverbs 1, the introduction to why Solomon has compiled these sayings. And we see right at the beginning that the Proverbs of Solomon are written for the instruction of his children, the simple, and the wise. Three distinct categories, and so we see that it is personal to his kids, but it is also corporate to the rest of us. Whether or not we fall in that category of simple or wise, I suppose, is up to our actions in life and the way in which we live, study, apply, reassess, and refocus a number of these elements that we talk about and explore throughout Proverbs. These Wisdom Wednesdays are a great overview of some of the Proverbs. I mean, maybe I think they're a great overview. You're the listener. You get to judge that. But what I would encourage each one of us to do is to spend time in the book of Proverbs, to learn, to listen, to read, to study, but for the purpose of application. And this is where we find in chapter 1, verse 7. I'm going to read this out to you because this is the founding point. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. That word fear that we say there is the word reverence. It's not I'm so afraid of you. It's, wow, I'm in such awe and reverence of you. It's like an incredible mentor or someone in a field that you want to study, that you look up to. That is the way in which Solomon indicates that those who fear or revere or have reverence towards or a high viewpoint of the Lord, that is the beginning of knowledge for them. And then goes on to say, fools despise wisdom and instructions, meaning, and he links this very theologically, and this is very deep revelation, that rejecting God is a rejection of wisdom, knowledge, and instruction. And so this is the formation that Solomon lays out in the book of Proverbs, that all the understanding that is here, yes, there are applicable things to our everyday life, but he encourages us to put that on a foundation of faith in Jesus, as opposed to just applying things to a faith and a foundation in ourselves. We see that Jesus talks about this, that we want to build our houses on a solid rock. He calls himself the rock. Throughout the Psalms, we see that God is our strong tower, our foundation, the cornerstone in which we put our trust. Genesis 1:1 rings out to me, in the beginning God. And just like that in Proverbs 1, Solomon is saying at the beginning of wisdom, at the beginning of knowledge, at the beginning of understanding, here we have God. And so just my encouragement as you study the book of Proverbs as an individual, by yourself, or along with us in this series of Wisdom Wednesday, let that be something that we recognize, that we do this because of a foundation we have in faith in Jesus Christ. Solomon says to know wisdom and instruction, to understand the words of insight, to receive instructions in wise dealings, in righteousness, justice, and equity, to give prudence to the simple, knowledge and discretion to youth, to let the wise hear and increase in their learning, and the one who understands to obtain guidance, to understand a proverb and a saying, the words and of the wise and their riddles. Sometimes when you listen to a very wise person speak, it sounds like riddles, but as you begin to break it down, all of a sudden it starts to make sense. And that's what we're trying to do here in this Wisdom Wednesday series, is break down, what is Solomon saying? How does it make sense, and how can we apply this? And so, friends, as we continue in on this journey, let's apply ourselves to learning knowledge and the riddles of what Solomon was saying. It's so funny. There's this theory. It's called inverting. is this concept. And inverting is asking ourselves the negative question to get a positive result. I'll give you an example because Solomon goes directly into inversion theory right away here after telling us that the beginning of wisdom is reverence of the Lord. He goes directly into inversion theory and begins to tell you what wisdom is not. Okay, so let me give an example. If I had a question, what does it take to have a strong marriage? Inversion theory would ask me the question, what would it take to have a terrible marriage? And that's a lot easier for me to answer. Cheating on my spouse would give me a terrible marriage. Not spending any time with my spouse would give me a terrible marriage. Taking advantage of my spouse, in whatever capacity that sounds like, would be a way to have a terrible marriage. Not communicating well, focusing on other things than what my spouse focuses on. And so inversion theory causes us to look at the negative and then avoid it to receive the positive. Okay, so if I know that cheating on my spouse would cause me to have a terrible marriage, then I need to avoid cheating on my spouse. Okay, how can I avoid cheating on my spouse? Would be the next line of that question. And again, you can invert that to be like, how would I cheat on my spouse? Now I'll avoid those things, which would by indirectly cause me to do the things that I should do to not cheat on my spouse to have a good marriage. And so it's a clever way of actually tricking our brains into thinking what we should avoid so that we can in fact avoid them. And by doing so, do what we need to do. In the book of Romans, Paul speaks about this, that we know about what we should do, but we don't always do it. And that what we don't want to do, we do. And so we struggle with this concept of knowing and understanding, but not always being able to apply that to our life. Solomon begins the book of Proverbs, the first 8 chapters. He speaks on the back and forth of wisdom versus folly. And he gives us the positives, he gives us the inversions, the negatives. And he shows us where we should follow in wisdom and where we should avoid in folly. And by doing so, gives us a pretty incredible roadmap of navigating choices. So in the spirit of inversion questioning, rather than questioning, how do I become wise? I can read the first few chapters of Proverbs with the question of how do I act like a fool? And all of a sudden, you begin to see things highlighted in a different way. I don't think we should always use inversion theory when we're reading Proverbs. But if you're really used to reading Proverbs, I would encourage you to give it a try and see if there's other things that kind of pop out at you. We see here that he begins off with the enticement of sinning, and then the call of wisdom is found, verse 20 through the end of 33. And what we will see here in 29 is wisdom has been talking for a few verses, and wisdom says that those who consistently and constantly reject the call of wisdom find themselves in places of chaos. But because they hated knowledge, they did not choose to fear the Lord, and would have none of my counsel, and despised all of my reproof. Therefore they shall eat the fruit of their way, and they shall have a fill of their own devices. For the simple are killed by turning away, and the complacency of fools destroys them. But whoever listens to me will dwell secure and will be at ease without dread of disaster. Friends, my hope and prayer for you as we study the book of Proverbs together, as you study it by yourself or with your family or with a group of friends, is that you would be aware that there are areas in our lives that we act like fools, and that we allow God to reveal those things to us, and that we hear his call of wisdom to act rightly, justly, and with equity within those things. Just as it says in the beginning of Proverbs chapter 1. And in doing so, we will become secure. Now, will there still be challenges and disasters? Of course. but at least we'll have a baseline knowledge of running to God as opposed to being surprised in the midst of our folly. So that's it for Wisdom Wednesday for February 1st. Thanks for being with me today. We'll see you next week on the 8th as we dive into Proverbs 8. God bless.